He required a single inquiry. It was not an address, a massive release of files, or a timer, but rather just a solitary query, a mere 4 words. Consequently, Pete Hegseth unraveled live before every recording device in the chamber. Representative Jason Crow gazed at Hegseth across the testimony desk and inquired softly, almost tenderly, about the identity of Tim Parlatore. The secretary's countenance altered immediately. His complexion did not turn pale or ashen, but rather a deep crimson. It was the distinct flush of an individual who did not anticipate that particular probe and was incapable of concealing that it struck its intended target. Subsequently, Crow reached beneath his workspace and retrieved a restricted dossier. Should you be a recent viewer to homeless people, please subscribe immediately because the forthcoming spectacle is an unprecedented occurrence in a legislative tribunal. A cabinet official in charge of defense lashed out at a representative on broadcast television while sworn to tell the truth. Following that outburst, the confidential portfolio demonstrated precisely why the inquiry incited such intense fury. The setting was House Armed Services Committee Room 2118 on a Wednesday morning at 14 minutes past 11. The proceeding had been underway for 4 hours out of a scheduled 6 hours in total. Hegseth had faced interrogation from 17 lawmakers before Crow assumed control of the broadcasting device. The secretary was exhausted. He had displayed hostility toward Democratic members throughout the entire morning. He had labeled them defeatists on 2 separate occasions. He had categorized an action as a gimmick on one occasion. He had informed a certain legislator that the man lacked any understanding of his own subject matter. He was far from a cautious state of mind. This disposition was precisely the incorrect mindset to possess when Jason Crow posed his inquiry. Crow had completed military service in the 82nd Airborne Division as a qualified ranger with a pair of combat tours. He avoids asking questions merely to enjoy the sound of his own voice. He presents inquiries because he already possesses the factual response and desires to observe the reaction of the testifier upon that realization. He grasped the audio equipment, placed a file upon his workspace, and left it sealed. Addressing the secretary, his vocal tone remained entirely steady as he stated his intention to inquire about Tim Parlatore. He asked if the official recognized that individual, prompting Hegseth to lean forward. Hegseth replied that Tim Parlatore is an intimate acquaintance and a specialized consultant who periodically advises his department on specific issues. Crow inclined his head at a deliberate pace. When asked if the man served as a government worker, the secretary noted he did not hold a customary federal position. He functions entirely within a consultative role. Upon being questioned regarding a classified clearance, Hegseth hesitated. He declared that he was unable to discuss that specific detail during a public forum. Crow directed his gaze toward his written records. When pressed on whether the advisor maintained a workspace within the Pentagon, the secretary claimed ignorance regarding the precise nature of his office accommodations. Crow elevated his eyes. He expressed disbelief that the official remained unaware if a participant in his conferences possessed a designated room within the facility. The jaw of the secretary clenched firmly. He dismissed the interrogation as an amusing but ultimately pointless tactic. Representative Crow displayed no emotional response. He merely proceeded with his interrogation. He asked the secretary if it was accurate that Tim Parlatore faced dismissal from an executive branch inquiry in the year 2025, to which Hegseth claimed a lack of knowledge. He then inquired if the legal counsel of President Trump had accused Tim Parlatore of deception, causing the secretary's vocal pitch to elevate marginally. The secretary countered by accusing the representative of executing a partisan gimmick. He insisted that this was the true nature of the situation. Crow persisted in his lack of visible reaction. Addressing Secretary Hegseth, he clarified that his genuine concern revolved around a highly particular matter. He reminded the official of his previous declarations to the panel and the national citizenry regarding an unwavering allegiance to President Trump. Nevertheless, relying upon the evidence contained within the portfolio, he accused the secretary of repeatedly operating covertly against the commander-in-chief. Hegseth grew noticeably enraged at that assertion. His vocal volume increased significantly. His physical stance shifted abruptly. He condemned the claim as a scandalous allegation lacking any foundation before Crow raised his hand to halt the interruption. He simply stated that he possessed a dossier. The entire chamber fell into absolute quiet. At this juncture, I must pause momentarily. Should you feel the national populace has the right to understand who attends military headquarters conferences without proper clearance, promote this broadcast immediately. The promotion icon is situated directly beside the approval symbol. You are permitted to boost content thrice daily at no cost. We possess a single week to elevate this upload into the top 100 most promoted broadcasts on the platform. Each individual promotion matters significantly. Execute this action immediately. Following that, continue observing because the items Crow extracts from that portfolio illustrate precisely why Hegseth erupted. Crow unsealed the dossier. He announced the initial record as he positioned it beneath the overhead recording lens. He identified it as the military headquarters entry ledger for the Office of the Secretary of Defense, generated to comply with a legitimate legislative summons. He flipped it open. The identity of Tim Parlatore emerges within this registry 47 times, spanning from February through April of the current calendar year. He shifted his gaze upward. He highlighted the 47 headquarters visitations for an individual categorized as a sporadic advisor whose classified access status remained unconfirmed. Hegseth parted his lips to speak. Crow proceeded without pause. The subsequent file contained military headquarters conference participation logs. These covered the identical time frame. He unsealed the paperwork. Parlatore participated in 23 restricted intelligence sessions within the quarters of the Secretary of Defense. He rested the paper on the surface. He repeated the total of 23 confidential presentations. He emphasized that this involved a person whose security authorization could not be discussed during a public forum. Hegseth tilted his upper body forward. He insisted to the representative that Tim Parlatore serves as a reliable consultant, making his admittance to the department completely proper. For the third file, Crow positioned the item beneath the broadcasting lens. He described it as an executive branch legal correspondence dating back to September 20th. He flipped the document open to a specifically marked portion. This memorandum records the dismissal of Tim Parlatore from a delicate executive branch legal issue. The official justification for his termination is cited verbatim within the text. He vocalized the contents. It noted apprehensions concerning the illicit dissemination of confidential data and a possible clash of loyalties connected to external patrons. He placed the record onto the desk. He repeated the phrase regarding the illicit dissemination of confidential data. He stressed that this represented the exact phrasing utilized by the executive branch legal counsel. He pointed out that this described the same individual who participated in 23 restricted intelligence sessions within the Secretary's quarters. He noted this was the same individual who entered the facility 47 times. He emphasized this was the very person whose classified access status remained off-limits during public testimony. The vocal tone of the Secretary sounded strained. He argued that the memorandum stemmed from an unrelated issue lacking any connection before Crow raised his palm in interruption. He announced the fourth piece of evidence. He identified the item as the roster of patrons belonging to Tim Parlatore's independent law firm. He noted it was a matter of public record. He unfolded the document. Among the active patrons as of this past March, he paused briefly to reveal, were 3 military suppliers maintaining pending proposals for defense purchasing agreements presently awaiting approval from the Secretary's Department. The chamber reacted with a subtle motion, representing the distinct realization of a crowd simultaneously comprehending why an inquiry regarding a single individual generated such intense defensiveness from the head of the military. Crow resumed his line of questioning. Consequently, the complete scenario involves an independent lawyer harboring patrons with active military agreements who entered your facility 47 times, participated in 23 restricted briefings, suffered prior dismissal from an executive branch assignment over illicit disclosures, yet you inform this panel that you remain ignorant of his security clearance, unsure of his workspace arrangements, and entirely unaware of his termination details from the executive branch. He fixed his gaze straight upon Hegseth. He declared to the official that the inquiry did not constitute a gimmick. He labeled it a blatant clash of loyalties. He described it as an officially recorded, highly particular clash of loyalties situated directly within the restricted intelligence sessions belonging to the Secretary of Defense. The legal counsel for Hegseth stood up instantly. He complained to the presiding officer that the paperwork misrepresented a complicated consultative dynamic and demanded his patron receive the chance to offer comprehensive background before the chairman aimed a finger in his direction. He commanded the lawyer to take his seat. He reminded the attorney that his patron remained sworn under penalty of perjury and possessed abundant chances to respond. Crow announced the fifth piece of evidence while reaching back into the folder. He identified it as an internal military headquarters moral compliance investigation initiated on March 28th. The central topic involved illicit entry to restricted purchasing data by unauthorized consultative staff. He revealed the contents. The investigation explicitly cites alarms sounded by a trio of veteran military department administrators regarding an unidentified person's habitual attendance during restricted sessions devoid of verified security clearance. He placed the record on the desk. This moral compliance investigation was initiated by your personal agency's oversight division regarding the individual you characterized as a sporadic advisor and whose admittance you deemed completely proper. He directed his eyes toward Hegseth for a concluding glance. He reminded the cabinet member that he posed a singular query. When asked about the identity of Tim Parlatore, the secretary claimed the man was an intimate acquaintance and sporadic advisor. However, the agency's own paperwork demonstrates he is an independent lawyer whose patrons hold active agreements with your division, who participated in 23 restricted sessions lacking verified authorization, who suffered dismissal from an executive branch assignment over illicit disclosures, and who triggered an internal oversight investigation by veteran military administrators. He halted momentarily. He asserted that this was the true reason the secretary labeled the inquiry a gimmick, not due to partisan politics, but because the official understood the contents of the portfolio and desperately wished the representative remained ignorant. He pivoted his body toward the presiding officer. He officially proposed to the chairman to submit all 5 pieces of evidence into the legislative archive. He additionally proposed to forward the issue to the Department of Justice for a penal inquiry regarding possible infractions of Title 18 United States Code Section 1030 concerning illicit entry into restricted electronic networks, Section 208 regarding actions impacting private monetary interests, and Section 1001 involving deceptive declarations to the legislature pertaining to Parlatore's admittance and authorization standing. He additionally proposed that the military headquarters internal watchdog execute an instant audit of every restricted session participant, lacking proper authorization acting in an advisory capacity since the 20th of January of the preceding year. Every single one of the 3 proposals received immediate backing. Every single proposition was formally approved. Crow collected his paperwork. He stared at Hegseth for a concluding moment. He reminded the cabinet official of his pair of combat tours. He understood the severe toll extracted when restricted intelligence falls into improper hands. He comprehended the fallout when the purity of a purchasing procedure becomes corrupted. He recognized the exact appearance of a situation where an individual occupies a chamber they possess no right to enter. He sealed the portfolio shut, a solitary query. That was the entirety of what was required. The identity of Tim Parlatore, expressed in 4 words. Yet you categorized it as a gimmick since you possess prior knowledge regarding the revelations within these records. An independent lawyer pending military agreements, 23 restricted sessions, 0 verified authorization, an oversight investigation stemming from your personal agency, and a volcanic outburst from the Secretary of Defense that informed this panel of every essential detail before the dossier was even unsealed. He pivoted his body in the opposite direction. Ensure you subscribe to Homeless People immediately because the following day we will publish the comprehensive military headquarters moral compliance investigation detailing every alarm sounded, every veteran administrator who submitted a grievance, every restricted session Parlatore participated in, and the specific purchasing matters under deliberation. This situation remains far from concluded. It is merely commencing. The paperwork is completely authentic. The legislative summonses are entirely legitimate. The moral compliance investigation originated from your personal agency. Furthermore, Pete Hegseth recently earned a referral to the Department of Justice for permitting an independent lawyer holding pending military agreements to participate in 23 restricted sessions before subsequently informing the legislature that he lacked knowledge of the specifics. Smash that approval icon. Distribute this broadcast across all platforms. A solitary query, 4 distinct words, a singular volcanic outburst, 5 pieces of evidence, and every single detail Hegseth attempted to conceal now resides upon the unalterable congressional record.